Hi, I'm Heavy D. He's got it.
Oh no, welcome to
Heavy D storytelling. What are we reading?
We are going to be reading the Bible first off, then we will not have any synopsis today, sadly. But then
We can have a synopsis.
Then we're doing.
That's fine. Does that mean that we don't have a synopsis?
Yeah.
I could spend an hour recapitulating what I talked about yesterday. Does that sound good? Hey, in all seriousness, I would like to recommend to anybody who hasn't been to the YouTube channel. The channel is really hard to remember. It's the same as my Facebook channel. It's called Heavy D Storytelling. You'll never guess what JJ just made.
Guess in the comments.
Guess in the comments, and we'll let you know later on in the thing. But I want to tell you about this Heavy D Storytelling channel on YouTube because I have 20 subscribers now, which, I mean, I don't really care how many it is, but I was really excited because I was looking at the analytics on the channel, and it says that Mara #1 has been seen 10 times in the last 7 days, which really astounded me. I didn't know that people actually look at it, or the people actually watch it. I mean, I'm really mostly posting these for myself and for my family, but if somebody else is watching them, then please let me know in the comments. It's actually kind of exciting to me. So on a secondary note, the same video has a 13% click rate, which I didn't know what the click rate was, but what that basically means is that if the little thumbnail comes up and you look at the thumbnail, then 13% of you have decided that it's worth your while to go ahead and click on the thumbnail and watch the video. So thank you for 13% of you who are watching. I appreciate you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and start Judges. I think we're on chapter 9 today. Yes, chapter 9, which is kind of long. So just bear with me and I'll get all ready. Judges chapter 9, this is the English Standard Version of the Bible. Thank you to the one person who has joined me, and I appreciate you. We appreciate you. Okay. All right. All right. So now Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his mother's relatives and said to them and to the whole clan of his mother's family, "Say in the ears of all the leaders of Shechem, which is better for you than all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh." And his mother's relatives spoke all these words on his behalf in the ears of all the leaders of Shechem, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our brother." And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. And he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men, and on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the leaders of Shechem came together, and all Beth Millo, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar at Shechem. When it was told to Jotham, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim, and cried aloud and said to them, "Listen to me, you leaders of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees once went out to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, 'Reign over us.' But the olive tree said to them, 'Shall I leave my abundance by which gods and men are honored, and go hold sway over the trees?' And the trees said to the fig tree, 'You come and reign over us.' But the fig tree said to them, 'Shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit and go hold sway over the trees?' And the trees said to the vine, 'You come reign over us.' But the vine said to them, lost my place, sorry. Shall I leave my wine that cheers God and men and go hold sway over the trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, you come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in good faith you are anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you acted in good faith and integrity when you made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done to him as his deeds deserved, for my father fought for you and risked his life and delivered you from the hand of Midian, and you have risen up against my father's house this day, and have killed his sons, 70 men on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, king over the leaders of Shechem, because he is your relative. If you then have acted in good faith and integrity with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come out from the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and lived there because of Abimelech, his brother. And I just want to say that Beer is actually spelled like beer. And so you could read it that he went to Beer and lived there. But I don't think that's what it's saying. I think it is a place. All right, so I'll keep going. Abimelech ruled over Israel 3 years, and God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem, and the leaders of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid on Abimelech their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem, who strengthened his hand to kill his brothers. And the leaders of Shechem put men in ambush against him on the mountaintops, and they robbed all who passed by them along that way. And it was told to Abimelech. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, moved into Shechem with his relatives, and the leaders of Shechem put confidence in him. And they went out into the field and gathered the grapes from their vineyards and trod them and held a festival. And they went into the house of their God and ate and drank and reviled Abimelech. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, said, who is Abimelech, and who are we of Shechem, and that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is not Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, but why should we serve him? Would that this people were under my hand, then I would remove Abimelech. I would say to Abimelech, increase your army and come out. When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger was kindled, and he sent messengers to Abimelech secretly, saying, behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his relatives have come to Shechem, and they are stirring up the city against you. Now therefore go by night, you and the people who are with you, and set an ambush in the field. Then in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you may do to them as your hand finds to do. So Abimelech and all the men who were with him rose up by night and set an ambush against Shechem in 4 companies. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city. And Abimelech and the people who were with him rose from the ambush. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, look, people are coming down from the mountaintops. And Zebul said to him, you mistake the shadow of the mountains for men. Gaal spoke again and said, look, people are coming down from the center of the land, and one company is coming from the direction of the diviner's oak. Then Zebul said to him, where is your mouth now, you who said, who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Are not these people whom you despised Go out now and fight with them. And Gaal went out at the head of the leaders of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gate. And Abimelech lived at Arumah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his relatives so that they could not dwell at Shechem. On the following day, the people went out into the field, and Abimelech was told. He took his people and divided them into 3 companies and set an ambush in the fields. And he looked and saw the people coming out of the city. So he rose against them and killed them. Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city, while the 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the field and killed them. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He captured the city and killed the people who were in it. And he razed the city and sowed it with salt. That's razed like destroyed, not raised like he built. When all the leaders of the Tower of Shechem heard of it, they entered the stronghold of the house of El-Berith. Abimelech was told that all the leaders of the Tower of Shechem were gathered together, and Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bundle of brushwood and took it up and laid it on his shoulder. And he said to the men who were with him, he said to the men who were with him, "What have you seen me do? Hurry and do as I have done." So every one of the people cut down his bundle and, following Abimelech, put it against the stronghold. And they set the stronghold on fire over them, so that all the people of the Tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women. Then Abimelech went to Thebez and encamped against Thebez and captured it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and all the men and women and all the leaders of the city fled to it and shut themselves in, and they went up to the roof of the tower. And Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and drew near to the door of the tower to burn it with fire. And a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Then he called quickly to the young man, his armor-bearer, and said to him, "Draw your sword and kill me, lest they say of me, 'A woman killed him.'" And his young man thrust him through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, everyone departed to his home. Thus God returned the evil of Abimelech, which he committed against his father in killing his 70 brothers. And God also made all the evil of the men of Shechem return on their heads, and upon them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Zerubbabel. That's the end of chapter 9. That is a lot to go through. So go ahead and put your comments in there and say what you think about it. Not a story that we normally hear in Sunday school. I'll just say that. More to follow. Right now, we're going to go ahead and get into Ben-Hur. I want to cover a quick synopsis, unless Kimberly is up for it. Okay, I think she's not feeling well. I don't know what the deal is. But so basically what happened is we got a lay of the land. JJ wants to say something. Just a minute. Here he is.
Did you guys put your comments in?
Nope, nobody's put comments in.
Okay.
Oh, it's a Lego bracelet. That's awesome. It's like a gauntlet. Pretty cool. All right, so there it is right there. All right, so here is what happened in the first 2 chapters of book 2 of Ben-Hur. So obviously book 1 is about the Christmas story, and then 21 years have passed now, and the author, Lew Wallace, kind of gives the readers a lay of the land, so to speak, what's going on in Judea. There's a lot of political things going on. This is, I can't remember the name of the governor that's there. Gratus, I think is his name. And and so anyway, then the scene in chapter 2 goes to a room where there's these two boys, and they had been friends when they were younger. And one of the boys, a Roman, went to Rome where he studied, and he came back and was a lot more Roman. And the other boy, a Jew, presumably probably a rich Jew, but still a Jew, he had stayed in Judea while the Roman went to Rome, and he had studied with some religious scholars. Anyway, so the Roman became more cynical, and the Jewish person became more religious, and the Roman was spouting off a bunch of things. And basically, he said that the Romans don't actually believe any of their myths, they just have them so that the priests have jobs and the poets can tell stories. So that's basically what the Roman myths are all about. And I think that in the presumption then is that the Roman dude, I can't remember his name, the Roman dude presumed that the Jewish guy has about basically the same feelings about the Jewish folklore. But then, so he starts to make fun of Moses and all that and everything, and different stories that are important to the Jewish. Messala is the Roman guy, and the Jewish guy, they just call him Judea or Judah, sorry. And so he starts making fun of things like Moses and different stories that are very important to the Jewish man. And they're actually boys, 17 and 19, I think is what they say. And the Jewish boy finally says, I understand you because you are a Roman. You cannot understand me. I am an Israelite. You have given me suffering today by convincing me that we can never be friends we have been. We can never be the friends we have been. Never. Here we part. The peace of God of my fathers abide with you. And Messala offered his hand. The Jew walked on through the gateway. When he was gone, the Roman was silent a while. He too passed through, saying to himself with a toss of the head, be it so. Eros is dead. Mars reigns. In other words, there is no love. Everything is war. All right. So here we are. Chapter 3, a Judean home. I think we have some more backstory coming. From the entrance to the holy city, equivalent to what is now called St. Stephen's Gate, a street extended westwardly on a line parallel with the northern front of the Tower of Antonia, through a square from the famous castle. Keeping the course as far as the Tyropian Valley, which it followed a little way south, it turned and again ran west until a short distance beyond what tradition tells us was the Judgment Gate, from whence it broke abruptly south. The traveler or the student familiar with the sacred locality will recognize the thoroughfare described as part of the Via Dolorosa, with Christians of more interest, though of a melancholy kind, than any street in the world. As the purpose in view does not at present require dealing with the whole street, it will be sufficient to point out a house standing in the angle last mentioned as marking the change of direction south, and which, as an important center of interest, needs somewhat particular description. The building fronted north and west, probably 400 feet each way, and, like most pretentious Eastern structures, was 2 stories in height, and perfectly quadrangular, a square. The street on the west side was about 12 feet wide, that on the north not more than 10, so that one walking close to the walls and looking up at them would have been struck by the rude, unfinished, uninviting, but strong and imposing appearance they presented, for they were of stone laid in large blocks, undressed on the outer side, in fact, just as they were taken from the quarry. A critic of this age would have pronounced the house Fortalesque in style, except for the windows, with which it was unusually garnished, and the ornate finish of the doorways or gates. The western windows were 4 in number, the northern only 2, all set on the line of the second story in such manner as to overhang the thoroughfares below. The gates were the only breaks of walls externally visible in the first story, and besides being so thickly riven with iron bolts as to suggest resistance to battering rams, they were protected by cornices of marble, handsomely executed, and of such bold projection as to assure visitors well informed of the people that the rich man who resided there was a Sadducee in politics and creed. Not long after the young Jew parted from the Roman at the palace up at the marketplace, he stopped before the western gate of the house described and knocked. The wicket, a door hung in one of the valves of the gate, was opened to admit him. He stepped in hastily and failed to acknowledge the low salaam of the porter. To get an idea of the interior arrangement of the structure, as well as to see what more befell the youth, we will follow him. The passage into which he was admitted appeared not unlike a narrow tunnel with paneled walls and pitted ceiling. There were benches of stone on both sides, stained and polished by long use. 12 or 15 steps carried him into a courtyard oblong north and south, and in every quarter except the east bounded by what seemed the fronts of the two-story houses, of which the lower floor was divided into lewens, while the upper was terraced and defended by strong balustrades. The servants coming and going along the terraces, the noise of the millstones grinding, the garments fluttering from ropes stretched from point to point, the chickens and pigeons in full enjoyment of the place, the goats, cows, donkeys, and horses stabled in the lewens, a massive trough of water, apparently for the common use, declared this court apartment to the domestic management of the owner. Eastwardly there was a division wall broken by another passageway in all respects like the first one. Clearing the second passage, the young man entered a second court, spacious, square, and set with shrubbery and vines, kept fresh and beautiful by water from a basin erected near a porch on the north side. The lewens here were high, airy, and shaded by curtains, striped alternate white and red. The arches of the lewens rested on clustered columns. A flight of steps on the south ascended to the terraces of the upper story, over which great awnings were stretched as a defense against the sun. Another stairway reached from the terraces to the roof, the edge of which all around the square was defined by a sculpted cornice and a parapet of burned clay tiling, sectangular and bright red. In this quarter, moreover, there was everywhere observable a scrupulous neatness, which, allowing no dust in the angles, not even a yellow leaf upon a shrub, contributed quite as much as anything else to the delightful general effect, insomuch that a visitor breathing the sweet air knew in advance of introduction the refinement of the family he was about calling upon. A few steps within the second court, the lad turned to the right, and choosing a walk through the shrubbery, part of which was in flower, passed to the stairway and ascended to the terrace, a broad pavement of white and brown flags closely laid and much worn. Lost my place. Making way under the awning to a doorway on the north side, he entered an apartment which the dropping of the screen behind him returned to darkness. Nevertheless, he proceeded, moving over a tiled floor to a divan, upon which he flung himself face downwards and lay at rest, his forehead upon his crossed arms. About nightfall, a woman came to the door and called. He answered, and she went in. "Supper is over, and it is night. Is not my son hungry?" she asked. "No," he replied. "Are you sick?" "I am sleepy." "Your mother has asked for you." "Where is she?" "In the summer house on the roof." He stirred himself and sat up. "Very well. Bring me something to eat." "What do you want?" "What you please, Amra. I'm not sick, but indifferent. Life does not seem as pleasant as it did this morning. A new ailment, oh my Amra, and you who know me so well, who never failed me, may think of the things now that answer for food and medicine. Bring me what you choose. Amra's questions and the voice in which she put them, low, sympathetic, and solicitous, were significant of an endeavored relation between the two. She laid her hand upon his forehead, then, as satisfied, went out, saying, I will see. After a while she returned, bearing on a wooden platter a bowl of milk, some thin cakes of white bread broken, a delicate paste of brayed wheat, a bird broiled, and honey and salt. On one end of the platter there was a silver goblet full of wine, and the other a brazen hand lamp lighted. The room was then revealed, its walls smoothly plastered, the ceiling broken by great oaken rafters, brown with rain stains and time, the floor of small diamond-shaped white and blue tiles, very firm and enduring, a few stools with legs carved in imitation of the legs of lions, a divan raised a little above the floor, trimmed with blue cloth and partially covered by an immense striped woolen blanket or shawl, in brief, a Hebrew bedroom. The same light also gave the woman to view. Drawing a stool to the divan, she placed the platter upon it, then knelt close by, ready to serve him. Her face was that of a woman of 50, dark-skinned, dark eyes, and at the moment softened by a look of tenderness almost material. A white turban covered her head, leaving the lobes of the ear exposed, and in them the sign that settled her condition, an orifice bored by a thick awl. She was a slave of Egyptian origin, to whom not even the sacred 50th year could have brought freedom, nor would she have accepted it, for the boy she was attending was her life. She had nursed him through babyhood, tended him as a child, and could not break the service. To her love, he could never be a man. He spoke but once during the meal. You remember, oh my Amra, he said, the Missala who used to visit me here days at a time. I remember him. He went to Rome some years ago and is now back. I called upon him today. A shudder of disgust seized the lad. I knew something had happened, she said, deeply interested. I never liked the Missala. Tell me all. But he fell into musing, and to her repeated inquiries only said, he is much changed, and I shall have nothing more to do with him. When Amra took the platter away, he also went out and up from the terrace to the roof. The reader is presumed to know somewhat of the uses of the housetop in the East. In the matter of customs, climate is a lawgiver everywhere. The Syrian summer day drives the seeker of comfort into the darkened Lewin. Night, however, calls him forth early, and the shadows deepening over the mountainside seem veils dimly covering Circean singers, but they are far off, while the roof is close by and raised above the level of the shimmering plain, enough for the visitation of cool airs and sufficiently above the trees to allure the stars down closer, down at least into the bright shining. So the roof became a resort, became playground, sleeping chamber, boudoir, rendezvous for the family, place of music, dance, conversation, reverie, and prayer. The motive that prompts the decoration at whatever cost of interiors in colder climes suggested to the Oriental the embellishment of his housetop. The parapet ordered by Moses became a potter's triumph. Above that, later, arose towers, plain and fantastic. Still later, kings and princes crowned their roofs with summer houses of marble and gold. When the Babylonian hung gardens in the air, extravagance could push the idea no further. The lad whom we are following walks slowly across the housetop to a tower built over the northwest corner of the palace. Had he been a stranger, he might have bestowed a glance upon the structure as he drew nigh it, and seen all the dimness permitted, a darkened mass, low, latticed, pillared, and domed. He entered, passing under a half-raised curtain. The interior was all darkness, except that on four sides There were arched openings, like doorways, through which the sky, lighted with stars, was visible. In one of the openings, reclining against a cushion from the divan, he saw the figure of a woman, indistinct even in white floating drapery. At the sound of his steps upon the floor, the fan in her hand stopped, glistening where the starlight struck the jewels with which it was sprinkled, and she sat up and called his name. Judah, my son. It is I, mother, he answered, quickening his approach. Going to her, he knelt, and she put her arms around him, and with kisses pressed him to her bosom. Chapter 4 is called The Strange Things Ben-Hur Wants to Know. The mother resumed her easy position against the cushion while the son took place on the divan, his head in her lap. Both of them, looking out of the opening, could see a stretch of lower housetops in the vicinity, a bank of blue blackness over the west with which they knew to be mountains, and the sky, its shadowy depths brilliant with stars. The city was still, only the winds stirred. Amra tells me something that has happened to you, she said, caressing his cheek. When my Judah was a child, I allowed small things to trouble him, but now he is a man. He must not forget, her voice became very soft, that one day he is to be my hero. She spoke in the language almost lost in the land, but which a few, and they were always as rich in blood as in possessions, cherished in its purity, that they might be more certainly distinguished from Gentile peoples, the language in which the loved Rebekah and Rachel sang to Benjamin. The words appeared to set him thinking anew. After a while, however, he caught the hand with which she fanned him, and said, Today, O my mother, I have been made to think of many things that never had place in my mind before. Tell me first, what am I to be? Have I not told you? You are my hero. He could not see her face, yet he knew she was in play. He became more serious. You are very good, very kind, oh my mother. No one will ever love me as you do. He kissed the hand over and over again. I think I understand why you would have put off the question, he continued. Thus far my life has belonged to you. How gentle, how sweet your control has been. I wish it could last forever, but that may not be. It is the Lord's will that I shall one day become owner of myself, a day of separation, and therefore a dreadful day to you. Let us be brave and serious. I will be your hero, but you must put me in the way. You know the law. Every son of Israel must have some occupation. I am not exempt, and ask now, shall I tend the herds, or till the soil, or drive the saw, or be a clerk or a lawyer? What shall I be? Dear good mother, help me to an answer. Gamaliel has been lecturing today, she said thoughtfully. If so, I did not hear him. Then you have been walking with Simeon, who, they tell me, inherits the genius of his family. No, I have not seen him. I have been up on the marketplace, not to the temple. I visited the young Messala. A certain change in his voice attracted the mother's attention. A presentiment quickened the beating of her heart. The fan became motionless again. The Messala, she said. What could he say to so trouble you? He is very much changed. You mean he has come back a Roman? Yes, Roman, she continued, half to herself. To all the world, the word means master. How long has he been away? 5 years. She raised her head and looked off into the night. The airs of the Via Sacra are well enough in the streets of the Egyptian and in Babylon, but in Jerusalem, our Jerusalem, the covenant abides. And, full of the thought, she settled back into her easy place. He was first to speak. What Messala said, my mother, was sharp enough in itself, but, taken with the manner, some of the sayings were intolerable. I think I understand you. Rome, her poets, orators, senators, courtiers, are mad with affection of what they call satire. I suppose all great people are proud. he went on, scarcely noticing the interruption. But the pride of that people is unlike all others. In these latter days it is so grown the gods barely escape it. The gods escape, said the mother quickly. More than one Roman has accepted worship as his divine right. Well, Messala always had his share of the disagreeable quality. When he was a child, I have seen him mock strangers whom even Herod condescended to receive with honors, yet he always spared Judea. For the first time in conversation with me today, he trifled with our customs and God, and you would have told you as you would have had me do, I parted with him finally. And now, O my dear mother, I would know with more certainty if there be just ground for the Romans' contempt. In what am I his inferior? Is ours a lower order of people? Why should I, even in Caesar's presence, feel the shrinking of a slave? Tell me especially why, if I have the soul and so choose, I may not hunt the honors of the world in all its fields. Why may not I take sword and indulge the passion of war? As a poet, why may I not sing of all themes? I can be a worker in metals, a keeper of flocks, a merchant. Why not an artist like the Greek? Tell me, O my mother, and this is the sum of my trouble. Why may not a son of Israel do all a Roman may? The reader will refer these questions back to the conversation in the marketplace. The mother listening with all her faculties awake from something which would have been lost upon one less interested in him, from the connections of the subject, the pointing of the questions, possibly his accent and tone was not less swift in making the same reference. She sat up and in a voice quick and sharp as his own replied, I see. I see. From association, Messala, in his boyhood, was almost a Jew. Had he remained here, he might have become a proselyte. So much do we all borrow from the influences that ripen our lives, but the years in Rome have been too much for him. I do not wonder at the change yet. Her voice fell. He might have dealt tenderly, at least with you. It is a hard, cruel nature which in youth can forget its first loves. Her hand dropped lightly upon his forehead, and the fingers caught in the hair and lingered there lovingly, while her eyes sought the highest stars in view. Her pride responded to his, not merely in echo, but in the unison of perfect sympathy. She would answer him at the same time, not for the world would she have had the answer unsatisfactory. An admission of inferiority might weaken his spirits for life. She faltered with misgivings of her own powers. What you propose, O my Judah, is not a subject for treatment by a woman. Let me put its consideration off till tomorrow, and I will have the wise Simeon. Do not send me to the rector, he said abruptly. I will have him come to us. No, I seek more than information. While he might give me the better than you, while he might give me that better than you, O my mother, you can do better by giving me what he cannot, the resolution which is the soul of a man's soul. She swept the heavens with a rapid glance, trying to compass all the meaning of his questions. While craving justice for ourselves, it is never wise to be unjust to others. To deny valor in the enemy we have conquered is to underrate our victory. And if the enemy be strong enough to hold us at bay, much more to conquer us. She hesitated. Self-respect bids us seek some other explanation of our misfortunes than accusing him of qualities inferior to our own. Thus speaking to herself rather to him, she began, Take heart, O my son. The Messala is nobly descended. His family has been illustrious through many generations. In the days of Republican Rome, how far back I cannot tell, they were famous, some as soldiers, some as civilians. I can recall but one consul of the name. Their rank was senatorial, and their patronage always sought because they were always rich. Yet if today your friend boasted of his ancestry, you might have shamed him by recounting yours. If he referred to the ages through which the line is traceable, or to deeds, rank, or wealth, such allusions, except when great occasions demands them, are tokens of small minds. If he mentioned them in proof of his superiority, and without dread, and standing on each particular, you might have challenged him to a comparison of records. Taking a moment's thought, the mother proceeded. One of the ideas of fast hold now is that time has much to do with the nobility of races and families. A Roman boasting in his superiority on that account over a son of Israel will always fail when put to the proof. The founding of Rome was his beginning. The very best of them cannot trace their descent beyond that period. Few of them pretend to do so, and of such as do, I say, not one could make good his claim except by resort to tradition. Messala certainly could not. Let us look now to ourselves. Could we better? A little more light would have enabled him to see the pride that diffused itself over her face. Let us imagine the Roman putting us to the challenge. I would answer him, neither doubting nor boastful. Her voice faltered. A tender thought changed the form of the argument. Your father, O my Judah, is at rest with his fathers, yet I remember as though it were this evening, the day he and I, with many rejoicing friends, went up into the temple to present you to the Lord. We sacrificed the doves, and to the priest I gave your name, which he wrote in my presence, Judah, son of Ithamar, of the house of Hur. The name was then carried away and written in a book of the division of records devoted to the saintly family. I cannot tell you when the custom of registration in this mode began. We know it prevailed before the flight from Egypt. I have heard Hillel say Abraham caused the record to be first opened with his own name, and the names of his sons, moved by the promises of the Lord, which separated him and them from all other races, and made them the highest and noblest, the very chosen of the earth. The covenant with Jacob was of like effect. In thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. So said the angel to Abraham in the place Jehovah Jireh. And the land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. So the Lord himself said to Jacob, asleep at Bethel on the way to Haran. Afterward, the wise men looked forward to a just division of the land of promise, and that it might be known in the day of partition who were entitled to portions, the book of generations was begun. But not for that alone. The promise of a blessing to all the earth through the patriarch reached far into the future. One name was mentioned in connection with the blessing. The benefactor might be the humblest of the chosen family, for the Lord our God knows no distinctions by rank or riches. So, to make the performance clear to men of the generation who were to witness it, and that they might give the glory to those to whom it belonged, the record was required to be kept with absolute certainty. Has it been so kept? The fan played to and fro until, becoming impatient, he repeated the question. Is the record absolutely true? Hillel said it was, and of all who have lived, no one was so well informed upon the subject. Our people have at times been heedless of some parts of the law, but never of this part. The good rector himself has followed the books of generations through three periods, from the promises to the opening of the temple, thence to the captivity, thence again to the present. Once only were the records disturbed, and that was at the end of the second period, but when the nation returned from the long exile, as a first duty to God, Zerubbabel restored the books, enabling us once more to carry the lines of Jewish descent back unbroken, fully 2,000 years. And now She paused as if to allow the hearer to measure the time comprehended in the statement. And now, she continued, what becomes of the Roman boast of blood enriched by ages? By that test, the sons of Israel, watching the herds in old Rephaim yonder, are nobler than the noblest of the Marchi. And I, mother, by the books, who am I? What I have said thus far, my son, had reference to your question. I will answer you. If Messala were here, he might say, as others have said, that the exact trace of your lineage stopped when the Assyrian took Jerusalem and razed the temple with all its precious stores. But you might plead the pious action of Zerubbabel and retort that all verity in Roman genealogy ended when the barbarians from the west took Rome and camped 6 months upon her desolated site. Did the government keep family histories? If so, what became of them in those dreadful days? No, no. There is verity in the books of generations, and following them back to the captivity, back to the foundation of the first temple, back to the march from Egypt, we have absolute assurance that you are lineally sprung from her, the associate of Joshua. In the matter of descent, sanctified by time, is not the honor perfect? Do you care to pursue further? If so, take the Torah and search the book of Numbers, and of the 72 generations after Adam, you can find the very progenitor of your house. There was silence for a time in the chamber of the roof. I thank you, my mother, Judah said next, clasping both her hands in his. I thank you with all my heart. I was right in not having the good rector called in. He could not have satisfied me more than you have. Yet to make a family truly noble, is time alone sufficient? Ah, you forget, you forget. Our claim rests not merely upon time. The Lord's presence is our especial glory. You are speaking of the race, and I, mother, of the family, our family. In the years since Father Abraham, what have they achieved? What have they done? What great things to lift them above the level of their fellows? She hesitated, thinking she might all this time have mistaken his object. Excuse me. The information he sought might have been for more than satisfaction of wounded vanity. Youth is but the painted shell within which, continually growing, lives that wondrous thing, the spirit of a man, biding its moment of apparition earlier in some than in others. She trembled under the perception that this might be the supreme moment come to him, that as children at birth reach out to their untried hands, grasping for shadows and crying the while, so his spirit might, in temporary blindness, be struggling to take hold of its impalpable future. They, to whom a boy comes asking, who am I, and what am I to be, have need of ever so much care. Each word in answer may prove to the afterlife what each finger touch of the artist is to the clay he is modeling. I have a feeling, oh my Judah, she said, patting his cheek with the hand she had been caressing. I have the feeling that all I have said has been in strife with an antagonistic more real than imaginary. If Messala is the enemy, do not leave me to fight him in the dark. Tell me all, he said. That's the end of chapter 4. Chapter 5 is called Rome and Israel, a Comparison. And that one's several pages, so we're not going to finish it today. So we will get to that one tomorrow. Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you tomorrow. You're only a day away. What? Oh, that's copywritten, you're right. Alrighty, so I think we've got probably maybe one long day left of book 2.
It took me 40 minutes to make this. 40 minutes.
Yeah, probably one long day tomorrow, and we can finish book 2, and then we'll be off to book 3 of Ben-Hur. And if you haven't figured out, Judah is Ben-Hur. What?
Do you know why there's like wings on it?
They're knives. Ah! All right. So I hope that everybody is having a great well, I think he just got my got my jugular, which is actually more in the neck, I think. But anyway. All right. So while I'm busy getting killed by Legos, I'm going to bid everyone adieu, and I hope you have a great evening, and we will see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow or possibly Tuesday. So, all right. God bless you. Have a good night.